Welcome back to part 3. For those of you who have stuck with me so far, thank you. And for those of you just tuning in, hopefully you'll go back and watch the last 2 videos. Today we're going to focus on the control cavity. A couple of the parts I got don't quite fit with the carved top, so we're going to clean that up a little bit, try to get things ready for making a back plate, and maybe even learn how to use a router. We'll see. Alright, so we're going to start by trying to chisel away a spot for our rear control cavity cover to mount to. As you can see, I took a ruler and a razor blade just to kind of give myself a stop. This actually went quite a bit better than I thought it was going to, especially after our experience with the router in the last video. These are just some cheap Harbor Freight chisels. Haven't put any work into sharpening them. But so far, they're getting the job done on this mahogany. I'm not sure they'd work quite as well for the maple, but for this job, they're great. If I go back to use these again, I'll probably try to sharpen them up properly. So as you can see, just trying to reinforce those lines, dig in, and the wood's flaking away. Going back, just trying to clean up, get things neat, tidy. I didn't really measure these, and I wish I would have. I just didn't really have a tool that would do the job well. You can see just kind of going over with sandpaper, trying to clean up any rogue marks just around there. But there really weren't too many odds and ends gouges. And you can see now going back with the chisel, cleaning it up a little bit further. Might have been easier if I had had sharper chisels, but honestly, if you need chisels, go to Harbor Freight. It was $10 for this set. As you can see here, it doesn't actually quite look as neat as it was, but it's usable. So now I'm going through and figuring out the depth that I actually need this cavity to be. You can see me measuring the pots, using a drill bit, and I'm actually going to use the drill bit and try to tape off the depth that I'm looking for. And you can see that again. Tape probably isn't the best method for this, but it does work for the most part. If you're trying to do a lot, you might be better off using some sort of whiteout or anything that you can mark your bit with just a little bit better. I brought the vacuum up after all of the mess I made last time. I thought I'd get clever and just hook the household vacuum up to my router, and it did not fit. That being said, it was nice to have to help clean out this cavity as I was going. You can see right now I'm going in just trying to lightly touch, and already we've had a little bit of a mistake with the router. I'll come back and correct this mistake later on in the video. For the time being though, we're just going to kind of trudge on and try to get down to where we need, and then we'll work on fixing our mistakes. That's the one thing I've learned so far in doing this. It's really not that difficult to fix your mistakes, but if you let them eat away at you, it will become a problem. So you can see there I've got the router unhooked, and I'm going through and really trying to measure to make sure this pattern bit, the bearing, meets the edge of my cavity. And it starts working, and it actually goes relatively well, especially compared to last time. So again, the vacuum, quite convenient for going through and trying to clean up. Dust collection is important, but if you're just starting out at this, sometimes you just have to make what you have work. So as you can see, I'm just trying to chisel up a little bit. I've used a pot in there again to try to figure out if I'm getting close to the depth I need. So you can see now I'm just trying to kind of chisel away at it. Still a little timid with the router, and still also worried that I could go too deep and find myself coming out the top of the guitar. So I didn't want to save all the fun for myself. I've tried to come up under the camera and just kind of show you guys what I am doing here. So as you can see, I've got it relatively cleaned up. Now I need to figure out where my pickup selector is going to go, because I realized that that is going to need a much larger hole. I've even thrown the bridge on here again to make sure I'm not going to interfere with it. So I'm going to go through. I found a drill bit that was close but not quite, but I am struggling so hard to get something with that hard maple top. So I've gotten a rat tail file out, try to clean it up. I'm trying to go back with the drill bit again. I want this to look nice, and I fear with that file I'm going to end up lopsided on one end. It will likely be covered, but I've already made a mistake that I'm trying to cover up. So we'd like to get it close. You can see again, I'm going through. Filing went relatively well, at least for the first part. You can see so far the hole is starting to get a little out of circle. Not quite what I would like to see, but just like our bridge, this is something that's going to be covered up. And with this being my first attempt at using any of these tools and just trying to make an instrument, I think I'll be happy with the results. So you can see I really had to go at it with this file. It took probably 10 to 15 minutes of sitting here and trialing. Obviously, I don't want to make it too large and not have it covered up by the washer and nut that go onto the pickup selector. But that probably cost me a little bit of time. Luckily, time is the one thing we have on this. You can also see here in the back, I'm trying to clean up that area again. The depth is an issue overall. Something to keep in mind if you're trying to buy parts for a carved top guitar. You're going to want to have the Gibson style, quote unquote, long shaft electronics. They'll make your life a lot easier. Alright, so you can see I'm setting the router up again, being extremely cautious as I measure this to make sure not only that I'm taking the right depth, but also that I have my bit set correctly for the bearing to ride on there so I don't blow out any further. I would say at this point I'm starting to figure the router out. You can see back with the vacuum again. Proved pretty useful on this. I wish I had had it during the last video. For some reason it didn't quite register in my mind. So you can see lifting it up. It's actually looking relatively clean. You can see the one spot I've blown out on the side. I think what we're going to have to end up doing eventually is chisel that away, and we'll just extend the cover a little bit. It'll also give us a little bit more support for that cover. Alright, so as you can see, the parts are starting to fit into place. Most importantly still, though, is this pickup selector. As I'm trying to screw that down, I'm struggling just a little bit. It's come through. I've got some threads showing, but we're going to have to go back through, chisel just a little bit more away to make sure that we're able to screw this down, especially after we add a couple of coats of finish. I don't want to have to try to rework this again. I'd like to get it right the first time, which I know hasn't been the theme so far, but it's still the goal. Alright, so there we go. You can see a lot more exposed. That screws on no problem. It's going to be in a little bit of an odd spot, but I don't think I'm going to hate it. It's definitely going to be out of the way, so I don't have to worry about bumping it while playing. But now we're going to have to go through. There was one spot that we burnt through in that corner, as I was afraid of. We've mixed some of the sawdust with some Tite Bond, and we're just trying to patch it through as much as possible. The goal here was to try to have it sticking out the front, and you can see on the tape that it is just slightly proud. Hopefully that means we'll be able to file it back or sand it back, and it will look good. So now we're starting to worry about this spot where the neck is slightly impeding on the neck pickup pocket. I'm trying to work through with a chisel. At this point, I've really started to like the hand tools. It's a little bit easier to avoid mistakes. It's a little bit easier to fix the mistakes than with a router. But now we're back with basically a mini router. This was actually an anniversary present from work. I got a cheap off-brand Chicago Dremel tool, and I ended up buying the StuMac router bit for it. Not going quite as bad as the first pass with the real router, but I did have a couple issues with it jumping. Admittedly, it's kind of terrifying using a router bit like that freehand, and I chipped away a little bit of the wood there just past the last fret. So you can see measuring. I don't want to take off too much, and admittedly I just don't want to be doing this. So now I'm going through and just trying to mark everything out. Kind of getting creative with the tools I've got. You can see it's still kind of jumping on me a little bit as I get in there. Partially, I think, just technique. I was sometimes trying to go the wrong way. As I get the hang of it, it goes really well, but you see me still trying to pull back against it, and that's where your mistakes are going to happen. With the rotation of this bit, it's more likely to skip and jump on me going towards myself in a way. But now we're getting towards the bottom, and things are a little bit safer, and it's going relatively well. So I vacuum everything out again, see where I'm at, kind of judge my line. At this point, I'm getting pretty comfortable with the chisels, trying to work away at it, also sand away just to smooth it out. And as you can see, that last chunk of wood that I was concerned about in the very first video has come off on me. So I'm trying to clean it up a little bit. As I said, I hit it a little bit with that router bit anyway, so I was going to have to clean it up. Just a little bit more work than I was ready for. We also lost a fret in the process. So now here we are back cleaning up the last little bit of our control cavity. Again, now you can see me actually taking the razor blade, using a straight edge. Basically just setting some stops to make things easier to chisel out. All right, here we go. So I'm getting the first little bits off of it, and then we'll start working in the appropriate direction. As you can see, this is still going surprisingly well compared to my luck with tools so far. You might see these chisels a lot more if I make some future builds. Again, just going through, sanding everything up, trying to get a nice clean surface. Still wishing I probably would have measured this with some sort of caliper or micrometer. The last little bit we need to do before we are ready to paint is cleaning up this gunk left over by the double stick tape. I know there are double stick tapes out there that work. The stuff I used just did not. Thank you for sticking around. In the next video, we'll work on finishing this. If anyone has any good suggestions for double stick tape, I would really appreciate a comment. I've got a roll that I will probably never touch again, at least in this facet of my life. If you want to see more of how this goes, how I recover from my mistakes further, please subscribe, and I hope to see you on the next video.